we are going to be imposing a 25% increase. We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs.
Donald Trump thinks he can weaken us with his plan to divide and conquer.
In a momentous and highly contentious decision that reverberated intensely across global financial markets and elicited immediate, fervent condemnation from key international allies, the Trump administration on Wednesday decisively implemented a sweeping 25% tariff on all imported steel and aluminum. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. This aggressive and unilateral action served as an unmistakable declaration of President Donald Trump's unwavering adherence to his America First protectionist trade doctrine. It marked a stark departure from decades of established international trade norms, signaling a profound shift towards prioritizing domestic industries and employment, even at the explicit risk of instigating widespread global trade friction and potentially undermining long-standing diplomatic relationships. The rationale behind these tariffs, as articulated by the administration, was to bolster U.S. national security by strengthening domestic production capabilities for these crucial materials, as well as to address what they perceived as unfair trade practices by other nations. Immediate global outcry and calculated retaliation. The European Union, a critically important and historically steadfast U.S. ally, wasted no time in issuing a powerful and unified denunciation of the tariffs, unequivocally labeling them as unjustified and a blatant contravention of fundamental international trade principles established under the World Trade Organization, WTO. In a swift, resolute, and strategically calculated response, the EU unveiled plans for significant and immediate retaliatory measures. Their detailed plan outlined the imposition of reciprocal tariffs on an estimated $28 billion worth of diverse U.S. goods entering the expansive European common market. This extensive and carefully curated list of targeted products was designed to exert maximum economic pressure on key U.S. sectors, encompassing everything from high-value recreational boats and powerful motorbikes to various categories of highly taxed alcoholic beverages. These initial levies were slated to take effect as early as April 1st, providing little grace period. Furthermore, the European Commission indicated a firm intention to introduce additional countermeasures in mid-April, clearly demonstrating their resolve and signaling that this initial salvo was merely the beginning of their response if the U.S. did not reverse its course. In stark contrast to the international outcry, White House spokesperson Kush Desai vigorously defended the administration's actions, portraying them as a masterful display of economic prowess. Desai asserted that President Trump had skillfully leveraged the immense strength of the American economy, which he characterized as the largest, most innovative, and most dynamic in the world, to secure a tangible and significant victory for the American people, particularly for American workers in the steel and aluminum sectors. Desai also emphatically underscored that the administration will be making no exceptions to the newly imposed tariffs, highlighting the broad, indiscriminate, and uncompromising nature of this protectionist policy, which applied to allies and adversaries alike. Market dynamics amidst trade, turmoil, and broader economic vulnerabilities. Despite the dramatic and potentially destabilizing trade developments unfolding on the global stage, which many analysts predicted would cause significant market volatility, investors in the U.S. appeared remarkably sanguine, seemingly unfazed by the brewing storm. This was evidenced by the discernible upward trajectory of U.S. stock futures ahead of the anticipated release of the latest Consumer Price Index report, a key inflation indicator. This seemingly calm and even optimistic reaction in the financial markets stood in striking contrast to the broader underlying economic climate, where major stock indexes have been experiencing a noticeable and sustained downturn in recent weeks. Specifically, the S&P 500, a key barometer of the overall health of the American stock market, had seen a significant decline of almost 9% from its peak in February. a slide that officially placed it into correction territory. A market correction, by definition, signifies a period of significant price decline, typically 10% or more, from a recent high, often indicating investor apprehension and a recalibration of valuations. This apparent dichotomy between immediate market sentiment and the broader economic trend highlighted the complex and often unpredictable nature of financial markets' responses to major policy shifts, where short-term trading dynamics can sometimes overshadow longer-term economic implications. Many analysts suggested that investors might have been pricing in the potential for strong corporate earnings or perhaps a quick resolution to the trade dispute. Profound repercussions for key allies, the United Kingdom and Canada. The United Kingdom, despite President Trump's past suggestions of a potential broader and more favorable trade agreement between the two nations in the post-Brexit era, found itself squarely in the crosshairs of these new tariffs, much to its disappointment. Jonathan Reynolds, the UK's Business and Trade Secretary, publicly expressed his profound disappointment with the levies, acknowledging the significant impact they would have on British industries that rely on steel and aluminum exports to the U.S. However, he indicated that his country would adopt a measured and pragmatic approach, choosing to prioritize ongoing negotiations for a more comprehensive trade deal with the U.S. rather than immediately escalating the dispute with retaliatory tariffs. This strategic decision signaled a strong desire to avoid a full-blown trade war with a crucial economic partner, especially as the UK navigated its own complex post-Brexit trade landscape. The situation with Canada, another long-standing and deeply integrated trading partner of the United States, mirrored the strong European reaction and at one point threatened to escalate even further into a more severe and damaging trade spat, reaching levels of tension not seen in decades. Canada had already been subjected to a 25% metals tax under previous Trump administration actions, causing significant concern for its steel and aluminum industries. Tensions heightened considerably when Ontario Premier Doug Ford, in a defiant and symbolic tit-for-tat move, threatened to impose a reciprocal 25% surcharge on electricity imports into the U.S. in direct response to the initial American tariff hike. This bold and challenging stance from a provincial leader prompted President Trump to publicly consider raising tariffs on Canadian goods to an unprecedented and economically devastating 50%, a move that would have severely impacted cross-border trade. However, a crucial and timely conversation between Premier Ford and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick seemingly managed to de-escalate the immediate threat of a doubling of tariffs, preventing what could have been a much more damaging and economically disruptive trade escalation between two of the world's largest trading partners. Following their discussion, Ford and Lutnick issued a joint statement on X, formerly Twitter, confirming their intention to meet again on Thursday alongside the U.S. Trade Representative to discuss the critical process of renewing the U.S. Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement, USMCA. This crucial trilateral trade pact underpins vast portions of North American commerce, underscoring the vital importance of ongoing dialogue and negotiation to maintain stable trade relations. In a separate and strongly worded Truth Social post, Trump continued his critique of Canada, labeling it a long-time tariff abuser, implying a history of unfair trade practices. He went beyond just threats concerning metals, issuing a broader, more aggressive statement. The United States is not going to be subsidizing Canada any longer and issuing a stark, almost confrontational warning. We don't need your cars, we don't need your lumber, we don't your energy, and very soon you'll find that out, indicating a potential and much broader disengagement from various Canadian imports, which would have profound economic consequences for Canada. Australia's calculated non-retaliation and China's forceful warning. Australia, which had harbored tangible hopes for an exemption from the steel and aluminum tariffs, a similar reprieve having been granted during the first Trump administration due to strong bilateral ties, ultimately announced its principled decision not to retaliate with reciprocal tariffs, despite its disagreement. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, while unequivocally calling the tariffs entirely unjustified and acknowledging their negative impact on Australian exporters, articulated a pragmatic and consumer-focused reason for not engaging in a tit-for-tat trade war. He argued that imposing counter-tariffs on U.S. goods would only serve to push up prices for Australian consumers, thereby directly harming their own citizens and domestic economy. This calculated